sit rep as follows.
Last night I dreamt about how things were. And then I woke up here.
To be a revolutionary is to love your life enough to change it. To choose struggle over exile. To risk everything. With only the glimmering hope of a new world to win.
Just the stuff laying around the house to get this shot done. It'll probably show up toward the end of Great State: The Rise. So I'm using my wife Kamel as the main subject. She ends up being my subject for most of these little shoots. Say hi to the kids.
Hello. Hi.
Most of the films are, entertainment, and I think this goes beyond entertainment to really have a message, and most of the films that I've probably worked in here in the Twin Cities have not taken that next step.
I think that among the innumerable projects I've done, Gray State definitely stands out like a beacon as a unique project as a whole itself.
It kind of fits in perfect, timing-wise, of what's going on with the government, even the police forces, or different things like that. You couldn't ask for better film to come out now.
At first I thought it was kind of cool because there was a lot of action going on, but as I heard a little bit about the concept, it became a little eerie.
The ideas that they're dealing with in Gray State are definitely very frightening. If it is true, that's frightening in and of itself, but almost what's more frightening is not knowing whether it's true or not.
The idea of Gray State scares me. As I watch the occupation movements, the protests in the Middle East, the financial fights in Europe that are going on right now, I do have fear. I do have fear about what the future holds.
Something of this magnitude has never really been done in the Twin Cities film community, I think, just from my years being here. I think it's never been done because I don't think people have ever tried to envision of doing something like this before, as in like a dark, character-driven piece with a compelling story, but yet intense military action. A lot of people don't have that experience, and what David and Mitch have brought to the table has helped them achieve this dream and this realization, but also in the mindset of saying, F it, why hasn't this been done?
I didn't really know that it was going to turn out to be this epic story about, a country gone wrong. I've always joked that they're producing a docudrama. Hopefully it doesn't quite turn into a documentary.
Well, it's certainly not a documentary by strict definition. Is it something that can happen? I'd say absolutely it can happen. And in fact, I'd say that history has shown us that it has happened more than once. It's a fictional story, but it's a real scenario.
I believe the message of Gray State is not a documentary, but it's also not a fiction film. It's in this weird zone where it's based off of fact, but it hasn't happened yet.
The movie, as I understand it, it's kind of a dystopian, near future kind of thing. It's kind of like 1984.
I like that.
But I don't really know anything else about it at all.
It's sort of the government behind the government, the power behind the power. There's sort of an Orwellian element to it.
I see it as a very real possibility, and in the last few years, it's becoming even more realistic. I mean, you're seeing the potential complete collapse of America, of a global economy. We're seeing the Orwellian nightmare unfold. We're seeing this mass surveillance society.
I think it's very realistic that we could live in a dystopian society where
dissent is legal.
I mean, you think about Orwell, something like 1984 or even Animal Farm, something like that. He wasn't just imagining this stuff. I mean, this was really going on. We know in our history that this kind of thing, at least on some scale, is possible to do.
It's really going to sneak up on you. There's going to be a lot of normal, everyday things that you're going to recognize. You're going to be able to see that it doesn't take much to turn it from being what we're used to in the suburbs to people lining up outside a Walmart demanding food. The fact that Gray State talks about the federal government being charged with food distribution is probably the most realistic thing about it.
I think one of the scariest things about Gray State is it doesn't take much of a stretch of the imagination to make the entire scenario plausible.
Twisting the normalcy, if you will, of everyday life into something that's really ugly is going to be the most interesting part of this movie.
We've seen other countries, modern countries, they have electricity and running water and all these other conveniences. We've seen them fall into and become brutal dictatorships.
I think it could very well come to that based on the things that are happening in the news, and we're seeing, the collapse of our economy, so many different things happening.
They have paved roads, they have running water, they have electricity, they have cable TV. So what is it that keeps it from happening in the United States?
Being Americans, we have a lot of freedoms. And what if those freedoms are taken away?
Gray State portrays one potential future for American society, and I saw this and wanted to think, well, that's just one of many possibilities, but it's scary to think how we're already halfway there. We're already at the light gray state, and it's all shades of gray.
If you really want to wake up and realize what's going on in your world today, take examples out of Gray State and go Google search some terms. Google search, FEMA camps. Google search Agenda 21, martial law. And don't just look at the first link. Look at the .gov website link and really read and spend some time researching. Anyone that does will be quite shocked and amazed at what they find.
I think one of the first things they need to do is just look at history, look at the history of the United States and the history of the world, and acknowledge that things like this can happen, things like this have happened, things like this are happening right now.
Things that we would have never believed just a few years ago are now reality. NDAA, secret arrest, the announcement of $40+ billion in the Washington Post to launch 30,000 drones in the next 8 years, weaponized against the American people.
Has estimated that drone attacks kill 50 non-targeted persons for each intended target.
The basis for the majority of our foreign and domestic policy today, our foreign policy of drones bombing brown people overseas, and now the domestic policy of drones policing us here at home that we only know about now through a Freedom of Information Act request, where we have 63 launch sites in the United States, some of which are not just NASA and military installations, but actual universities throughout the country. And we have no idea how many of these drones are out there.
We see the globalists building a giant police state control grid and calling themselves technocrats. A technocrat is a group of dictators who use technology to control people.
Incrementally, it's been happening again and again and again. 5 years ago, we didn't have 63 drone sites in this country. 5 years ago, we didn't have the NDAA. 5 years ago, there wasn't a push for SOPA and PIPA and now ACTA and beyond to further control the internet. 2004, for instance, free speech zones were unknown. Everywhere was a free speech zone. That's what this country was founded on.
It's a peaceful assembly. You are an American citizen, and you shall be arrested for having freedom of speech and using the First Amendment of the United States Constitution. The Constitution is a very dangerous concept. Do not dare try to invoke the First Amendment of the United States Constitution. This is no longer America. This is Walmart, the United States of America.
As they encroach on our rights, as they say there are more and more threats out there and terrorism is real, we're taking off our shoes first, and then we're getting patted down, and then we're getting body scanned and radiated and patted down again, and now I'm getting swabbed with my hands to check for explosives.
Do you like to fly?
Yeah.
Do you think we should be treated like cattle?
now, yeah.
Yeah, I do.
You do?
Personally, I do.
Do you think there's integrity in politics or integrity in banking?
Wait, no, go back to that.
Go back?
You don't think that airport security is a good thing? You know what? They're not violating anybody's rights.
They
You
are.
don't have to fly if you don't want to.
Every American, every person on United States soil or international soil can be deemed as a terrorist. If they have really any reason to want to detain you, they don't need to acknowledge your Fourth Amendment rights.
It's what supported things like the Patriot Act and now the NDAA and the ever-encroaching police state.
By order of the City of Pittsburgh Chief Police, I hereby declare this to be an unlawful assembly.